All right. Well, welcome everyone to our first users group webinar here at RoastLog. Hopefully all of you were able to log in without any problems. My name is Lindsay Fan, and I'm one of the co-founders of RoastLog, and I'm actually going to be the moderator for the session today. If you've been working with us long enough, some of you actually may probably already know me. It was Brian, our CEO, and I who just about begged and borrowed our way to SCAA conference in Atlanta, Georgia a couple of years back. And at that time, thanks to a friend of ours in the industry, we were able to set up shop in his booth, and at any rate, armed with a couple laptops and monitors, we started showing people, the software that we thought could benefit roasters everywhere. So little did we know it would really grow beyond roasters. It's amazing now, really, that producers and importers, exporters, green buyers, wholesalers, retailers, all are interested in using our software. So at any rate, needless to say, our user community has been growing steadily. So that's the great news, and steadily enough for me to rejoin the team after being away for a little over a year. And I have to say it's great to be back. Nowadays, my role is to help the business keep growing, and one way is to make sure that all of you, our customers, are just thrilled with the product as we just continue to grow our user base. So it's really been satisfying. It's satisfying to see things grow from essentially an idea between a couple childhood friends into a tool that so many roasters have come to depend on. And hopefully, after today, and in fact after the weekend when we introduce our new functionality, we're hoping to make this software as useful to people like operations managers and green buyers as it's been for roasters. So at any rate, joining me today, I wanted to let everybody know that we've got somebody from RoastLog that many of you may already know. Maybe you've met him in person, especially if you live here locally in San Francisco in the Bay Area, or maybe if you visited us at the SCAA at our booth in the last couple of years. Ryan Brown is our Chief Information Officer, and he's one of our fearless software developers. He's really essentially in charge of making sure that the user interface of the software is clean, and basically your experience with the software just rocks. So in the end, it's all about the way the software looks and feels, and he wants to be powerful, yet simple and intuitive. He wants software that works for you and doesn't get in the way, especially if you're using it on a regular basis. So Ryan, if you're there, I want to just say a quick hello.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for coming.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, so the reason why we're here, right, is that we wanted to share with you our next release of software, and we're really excited. We're really excited. Excited to share what arguably is probably the most significant release of our product since we launched just over a year ago. You all know that on a regular basis we're making minor tweaks and updates to improve your experience with the software, and we're going to continue doing this. We always will. But what we're rolling out over the weekend goes beyond these minor releases and represents a pretty big leap in the utility of the software itself. I mention this because at the end of the day, these changes are going to benefit everyone. Regardless of your subscription level, things are going to look and feel a little bit different. And the way you enter information into the system, and frankly the information that's presented back, is going to be a lot richer, and we believe you're going to like it. So ultimately, the goal for today is to give you all a flavor of what these new features are and how they might impact your roasting operation. Okay? So we've allotted time at the end of Ryan's demo, which is to follow me here in a moment. We've allotted some time for some Q&A. So I just want to give you a heads up. If for some reason we can't get to all questions during the session, we certainly will have time afterwards. We've done one of these already yesterday, and it seems like we tend to stay right to that 1 hour time frame, okay, including Q&A. Before I hand off, though, to Ryan, I just wanted to share a couple housekeeping items. First off, we are recording this demo so that you folks can come back and review the webcast itself, or maybe if you want to share the information with a colleague within your organization, that's fine. It's going to be there. So don't worry that, today is it and it's gone. And then last but not least, Ryan's going to launch a quick poll as soon as he gets started, and just ask that you all participate. The idea here is that we wanted to give you all an opportunity to see what the experience level is of the others that are attending the session, okay, and some of your peers. At the same time, it's going to allow us to know who's on the line so we can kind of pace the presentation appropriately, okay? So that's it from me. I'm done talking for now. I'll be back in a little bit, and I'm going to hand it off to Ryan at this point. So Ryan, go ahead and take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay. So this is Ryan Brown. Thanks for the introduction. And before we dig into the meat of this thing, I just want to ask you 3 quick questions. Let's take a quick look here and see. So, okay, there's a lot of coffee roasters, operations managers, green buyers, owner. Perfect. That's a great mix of people, which really highlights one of the key things about this piece of software is that this is really it's built for companies that roast coffee, but it's built to use throughout the organization rather than just your roasters. Asking this one just to get an idea of how familiar everybody already is. I'll have more to say about that in a second. Okay, so we have a fair amount of people that are pretty familiar with it. So this presentation is really geared toward our existing customers. It makes some assumptions about your familiarity with roasting coffee and using RoastLog as it is today. So for those of you who might be attending and are not current customers or have not been using it for very long, I apologize if things aren't as clear as you'd like them to be. Please know that we'll be doing another webinar which will be geared toward people that are less familiar with the system, that is, brand new customers or people that are not customers yet. And one more question real quick. Okay, thanks a lot for filling those out. As expected, most people use this every day in their operations. That makes sense for logging roasts. With that, I'm going to return to my presentation. All right, so first of all, thank you all so much for being our first customers. RoastLog's been available for just over a year now, and some of you have been with us for most of that time. I believe then that we built a good and useful product. Now I know that that's true, so thank you very much. On June 11th, we're releasing our first major addition to RoastLog, Green Coffee Inventory Management. Why green coffee? Well, very soon after releasing RoastLog, we started to hear loudly and clearly from roasters that green coffee inventory needs were not being met by any off-the-shelf existing software. There's QuickBooks, there's Fishbowl, there's MYOB. None work well for coffee, failing to handle shrinkage and to provide flexible reporting. More sophisticated, customized inventory systems are far too costly. All the existing green coffee inventory systems I've seen are various combinations of homegrown databases, spreadsheets, and other custom software that tries to glue everything together. This is really not so great. State-of-the-art seems to be Google Docs. Most people have managed to put together something that works, but nobody seems very happy. The problems with existing software systems are these: too time-consuming and too hard to get answers to questions about your data. Also, since most systems are homegrown, the more sophisticated they are, the harder and more costly they are to maintain. For the last 6 months or so, and with lots of help from roasters, we've created a tool unlike anything else out there. Just like our logging tool, it's built specifically for coffee roasters. With continued customer feedback, we'll refine the product, release enhancements, and repeat. That's how we do things. So what is it? What is this green inventory system of which I speak? Well, it solves some big problems for you by tracking current and historical information about your green coffee costs and usage. Know what you have, how much you have, where it is, and its value, including transportation and storage costs. Know your rate of use and what you used it for. It's designed to work with RoastLog as you've known it. However, you may use either logging or inventory as a standalone product. Okay, so what is it not? RoastLog's green inventory management system is for green coffee, tracking from the time you order it until it leaves your roaster. We do not do anything with your cafe, retail, or wholesale ordering. We do not tie in directly to any accounting software. We believe it's easier and better in the long run to break problems into small, manageable pieces and then find a great solution. We would love to expand the system further, and we'd love to hear from you about what problems need to be solved. So who's going to use it? Well, right now, I'd predict that 90% of RoastLog's usage is from your roasting staff logging roasts. RoastLog's green inventory management system is meant to be used throughout your organization. Roasters will input starting mass in their roast queues, so coffee is automatically deducted from inventory. Green buyers will use it for ordering and decision making. Accounting will use data from the system for bookkeeping. Sales and marketing will use the system to understand pricing and profit margins. Business owners and managers will use the system for real-time information about that segment of their business. No small thing considering the amount of money that can be tied up in commitments and inventory. When is this happening? On June 11th at around 10 p.m. Pacific time. Who's affected by this? Every one of our customers. Regardless of whether you choose to use the new inventory system or not, all data will be moving to the new system. Everyone will need to upgrade to RoastLogger version 2.0.5. This is really important. After the new system has rolled out, old versions of RoastLogger will not work. The current version of RoastLogger is always available at roastlog.com/downloads. The website will have new sections, though it will keep the same look and feel you're already familiar with. Now, we know you have a business to run, so I'll do a demonstration to help you transition smoothly. The Red Hot Poker Coffee Company has been using RoastLog for some time. Let's begin by taking a look at their main inventory page right after porting their data over. So what we're looking at here is not wildly different than the inventory page you're used to. There's just more information. It shows a high-level view of what, where, and how much, both quantity and value. Now, because we're looking at the data that was ported to the new system for an existing user, all values are 0. So what's happened? There are 5 key points here, which I'll go through and then sum them up. First, provided that you have downloaded and installed the new version of RoastLogger, know that you can go on roasting coffee right now, continuing just as you have been. Downloading and installing RoastLogger is the only thing that is absolutely necessary to transition into the new system. Second, all your roasts have been moved over, which I can show by looking at the inbox. All this data was ported right on over, so all your roasts are still there. Third, each coffee that you had in the old system is now in the new system. If you have items in your inventory that are not in use anymore, it'd be fine to clean that up in the next couple of days, which is just a suggestion. You can, of course, clean things up on the new system as well. Fourth, all your inventory items start off with a quantity of 0. You'll need to enter that information, but you're not required to do so if you don't want to. However, to start getting real value out of the inventory system, you'll definitely need to begin adding this kind of data. And fifth, there's one single component roastable that's been created for each of your inventory items. I just said the word roastable. What is that? If you'll hang on just a second, I will explain. So let's go back and look at those 4th and 5th items in a little bit more detail. The 4th one was about all these zeros. So the change to make there is done by clicking on the plus or minus existing inventory button. And I've done that and pre-filled out this page for you. So the list is basically the same, all your coffees and your current values. This box here allows you to put in your actual value. So I've entered a bunch of numbers here. You can add any kind of note that you'd like. We're doing a fresh start into a new system. And I'm going to save that. I guess I'll point out right here, this column also points out the change. So if I put an actual amount in here that is less than what I actually have, the change will show up negative. Okay, so now we're back on the main inventory page, and these numbers have changed. So we're calculating a bag value for you, which is something that you set up as well. And I'm also going to point out at this point the messaging that we provide for you. It shows you adjusted inventory for 8 beans. And these things come up throughout the application. You remove them simply by clicking the X, and we keep a little bit of history for these things too by popping open this little tab where I can show the most recent or all of the messages that I've recently received. Now, number 5 on that was about roastables. So let's go have a look at roastables. Let me talk about what they are. So a roastable is just a representation of one way of roasting a coffee. If you roast a Cafe Vita one way for a single origin and another way for a pre-roast blend, and yet another way as part of your espresso blend, in our system you'd create 3 roastables, one for each of those uses. Doing things this way makes it possible for you to know where your green coffee goes and how your profit margins break down based on your usage. So now you have the gist of what will happen when your data is ported over. And to sum that up, a new version of RoastLogger is needed, and that is all that is absolutely necessary for you to log roasts. All your roasts will be moved over. All the coffees that you have in your inventory in the current system will be moved over to the new system. You'll need to input quantity and value information, but only if you want to. One roastable has been automatically created for you. Roastables are what you add to your roast queue. Now I'm going to move on to continue with more information about logging roasts and adding coffees to the system. Let's go back to the main inventory page and look at adding a new coffee into the system. So I click the new coffee button. I'm going to get a page that looks like this, which I've already partially filled out. So you can see here we have 5 required fields. I am not a fan of making people put in information that they don't really need to put in, so we've tried to minimize this to just the set of information that really makes sense. There are a number of items on here, all optional, that you may or may not want to add. I'm going to add this in as a Sumatra Haramu Tiger of 2011, 100 bags of it. Here's my bag weight, and then I'm just going to go ahead and try to add that. And I got an error, which says before adding a coffee, you must create an importer warehouse in your list of locations. So that's this field right here that I did not fill out. So now's a great time to take a second to talk about the fact that the new system is location aware, which means that everything in your system is tied to a location. Every time you roast a coffee, the system knows where that roast was done. Every coffee that you have has a location. It starts out in an importer warehouse, and then it will be moved into a roastery. And since I'm talking about the word location, you may be guessing correctly that multiple locations is, of course, totally fine. We're expecting people to have a whole bunch of importers or warehouses that they might pull from, and if you're a larger organization with more than one roasting facility, you can add that into the system too, and it will keep track of everything for you and give you the ability to analyze your information individually or across the whole organization. So in order to proceed, I really do have to make a new importer warehouse. So I'm going to add Royal Coffee in here. Okay, and that's going to create a new import or warehouse location for me. And I'm also going to go ahead and fill out this price per unit mass field. This is key. We calculate a lot of dollars for you now. So as soon as you know what you're paying for your coffee, it's a great idea to add that into the system. But again, not required. Okay, so there's my message that says I successfully added that to my inventory, and I'm back on the main inventory page. Now let's look at the difference on the page now. Now I've got this Sumatra, which is in Royal Coffee, and there's 100 bags of it, and here's how much it's worth. Now what's different here is that here's my non-roasting facility column where I've got Royal Coffee, and here's my roasting facility column. And because you transitioned, everything was placed immediately into your roasting facility. So ultimately what we're trying to do here, of course, is roast coffee. So at this point, all of these guys you can roast. But this one isn't located in a roastery yet. So let's figure out how to do that. If I click this text box, this button becomes available. And now I can move inventory. So if I move over to the Move Inventory page, up here it tells me that I'm moving coffee from Royal to one of my roasteries. In this case, I only have one. And here's the coffee that I'm moving. This movement works for multiple coffees. If you're going to pull 5 different coffees from Royal, this list will show all 5 of those coffees. You tell us how many bags you want to pull out, and you can also change the price if that was something that happened between the time you originally entered this coffee and are actually pulling it. Enter your storage fees here. Let's say I paid $40 to have that coffee stored, and let's say I'm paying $300 to have it shipped. We have a custom fee fields here so that if you got a discount, anything that we didn't think of to put in here that you'd like to track cost-wise, you can add that field. And an order date and arrival date. This is an editable thing. The system allows you to go back and update this move item with information as it rolls in. In this case, I'm going to pretend that I'm entering this after I've received the coffee and I've got an invoice in hand. So I can see everything. I know when I ordered it, and I know what all my fees were, and I know my arrival date. So I'm going to say I actually ordered this coffee back on the 6th. Other optional fields, shipper, internal reference number, and any notes I want to add about that move. When I move that coffee, I will return back to the main inventory page, and now this coffee looks a little different. Now it's showing me that I've got 90 bags in Royal, and that I've got 10 bags at the Red Hot Poker Coffee Company, and it's showing me what its value is. So now's a good time to look a little deeper into what we're doing with each coffee. So clicking on a coffee takes you to the coffee detail page. And what you see here is a chart that's nice and empty right now. What this chart develops into is a 2-week snapshot of everything that's going on with your coffee. So right now, we've had only one thing happen because I just created this and I just added it to the system. So if I click on this orange dot, I'll see what's going on in the Red Hot Poker Coffee Company, and this says I moved in 1,543 pounds of coffee. If I click on the blue dot, that's going to show me what's gone on at Royal. So I initially called up Royal and said, hey, I want to commit to 100 bags of this coffee. Okay, great. And then on the 10th, I also pulled 10 bags. So the move out corresponds with the move in. Now the other pieces of information we're showing down here are a summary of the original information you entered about your coffee. This looks almost exactly like the new coffee entry form. And then over here, we're showing a summary of your facilities. So at Royal Coffee, here's what you've got in there. The basics about it, size of bags, your current value, and your price per pound. And then down here I'm showing the roasting facility. Now what's cool about this one is this. So right here we have started to include the costs that are associated with moving that coffee. So you pulled 10 bags of coffee out, and what that means is that your cost per pound for that coffee has jumped up a little bit. You originally entered it as $5.46, now it's showing up as $5.68, and that is factoring in the storage fees and the shipping fees that I added when I moved that coffee. Now, at this point, we are ready to roast because I've moved this coffee into a roastery. And just like when you ported your data over and we created a bunch of roastables for you, every time you add a coffee to the system, we will create one roastable for you. You may definitely want to add roastables, and I'm going to do that now, which will segue us into the concept of pre-roast blending, which is something that the system fully supports. So on the main roastables page, here are all my roastables. Here's what I just created. I just created that coffee, and as soon as I moved it into the Red Hot Poker Coffee Company, I got this roastable. Now I'm going to create a roastable blend. This is a pre-roast blend. So I'm going to call this Granny's Blend, and I'm going to put Cafe Vita in it, 50%. I'm going to put some Uganda in it. Let's go 25%. And then let's go Colombia, 25%. Anything additional you want to add in here? If you happen to know it at the time, have a decent idea of what the shrinkage is going to be on this blend, because maybe you did basically the same thing last year, you can put that in here if you want. This number is updatable on a roast by roast basis with real data instead of an estimate. I'm going to add that to the system. And so now if I look in my list here, there it is, Granny's Blend, and there's my recipe. So this list of things right here is what you roast. It's no longer quite true that you roast a bean. That's physically true, but with respect to the system, we're roasting roastables. And like I said, that gives you the ability to track a lot more detail about how you're using your coffee. So let's roast. I'm going to switch on over to RoastLog and do a sync. Now, hopefully, everybody's thinking, why did you tell me I have to upgrade? This doesn't look any different. That's right. There's very little difference that you will notice in use of RoastLogger. Most of the differences are behind the scenes, things you won't notice. But nevertheless, it is very important that that get upgraded. So I'm going to go ahead and add a couple of things to my roast queue. Let's roast some of this. And let's do 40 pounds of it. And let's let that happen on my roaster called Auto. And then let's add some Granny's Blend, and we'll do 40 pounds of Granny's Blend also happening on Auto. Now, one thing that maybe you noticed is this little triangle here, which is new. When I add a pre-roast blend to my roast queue and pop open the triangle, I get a breakdown of what I'm putting in that blend based on the recipe that I defined in the website. So I'm going to do 20 pounds of Cafe Vita, 10 pounds of Uganda, and 10 pounds of Colombia to make this up. Now, each of these is editable on the fly. Granny's Blend, I would expect, would be something that you offer year-round, and it's made up of different components depending on what you have. So when you run low on your Uganda and get to the roast where you're going to switch to a new coffee, you just do that right here on the fly. Let's swap it out with Sumatra. Now, as long as I have not clicked the Save button on this roast, I can change this. I can change this before I've started roasting it, and I can change it while I'm recording the roast, all the way till I hit Save. So let's leave this as I had it in the first place. And let's go ahead and log these roasts, and then we'll go back and see the very fancy thing that happens in inventory. Okay, let's do a few seconds of the Granny's Blend. All right, and then we'll head back to the website. Let's go check our inbox. And there are those roasts. I roasted this. That's a lovely roast curve. And I roasted Granny's Blend, another lovely roast curve. You can see here all the basic data about the bean, and of course this roast is editable just like it is today. Now let's look at inventory. So what went into Granny's Blend? I remember that Uganda went into Granny's Blend, so let's go see what's going on there. So what I see here is that I made a manual adjustment and initially brought in 600 pounds of coffee, and then I roasted 10 pounds of coffee. And something about the chart has been calculated wrong, so don't freak out about the chart. Obviously the chart would be a downward slope, not an upward slope, as you decrease the amount of coffee that you have. Key point is that we know that when you roasted Granny's Blend, 10 pounds came off of the Ugandan. Now, I think it was also Colombian. This chart looks a little nicer. So same thing. I made a manual adjustment to initially get some coffee in there, and then I roasted and 10 pounds came off. So this is one of the magical things about inventory, which we are really excited about and think is a big time saver, is all this sort of automatic deducting of things. So that gets you roasting. And that sort of more or less sum things up. I'm going to point out one other thing very quickly before I move on to talk about the real value of the system, where I think for business owners the real value really starts to show up. But I want to talk briefly about locations. I already went over how locations are important and how everything is location aware. This is the main locations page where you add locations. You just say whether it's a roasting facility or not, and add that in. And all those locations are where you can move coffee into. In addition to that, there's a new preference in RoastLogger, which is your default location. So this is particularly relevant for people that have multiple roasteries, but wherever this application is installed, I can set my default location, and then it will always know that, oh, this is the Red Hot Poker Coffee Company roasting facility, and I'm going to deduct inventory from that location. I'm going to take a second to point out something that maybe has been in RoastLogger for a little while, but maybe not everybody's aware of, which is this temperature offset. You can use this to bring the readings on RoastLogger more in line with whatever other temperature monitor you might have on your roaster already. Some people like those numbers to agree, and they're usually off by a few degrees. This can help with that a little bit. Okay, now I'm going to go back to the website. Let's talk about reporting. So this is the main difference when you start to think about whether you're going to up your subscription and go with the inventory module. The main difference between somebody who subscribes to inventory and somebody who does not is what you're going to be able to do with the data that's put into the system. Everybody is going to see, up until this point, everybody's going to see basically the same thing. Everybody's going to be able to enter all that information when you add a new bean. All this stuff is going to happen, but when it comes to actually analyzing your data and looking at the history of how you're using your coffee, that stuff will not be available unless you've upgraded your subscription to inventory. So let's look at what a couple of those reports may look like. I'm going to take an example of looking at the roastables. I'm going to say, let's pretend that I had several Guatemalans between March 28th and June 10th, and that I would just want to look at what happened at this particular roastery. When I bring that up, I get a nice little colorful chart here, and what this chart really displays is that there are 4 different Guatemalan coffees. Brown, green, orange, blue are each of the coffees, and that there are color variances inside those bars which point out the roastable usages of those coffees. So, for example, La Concepcion was used in the house blend, 89 pounds roasted for house blend, and 379 pounds roasted for single origin. So my hope is that this kind of information becomes really valuable to roasters, and I want to continue to hear from our customers about what you actually want to know about. We're collecting a ton of data, and there's a whole bunch of questions that we can answer. We just need help figuring out what the right questions are. Another report, which I think everyone will be interested in, is a cost of goods sold report. Now, when I look at this report, I'm going to point out that this is organization-wide. There's no reason that you wouldn't be able to do a cost of goods sold report on a specific coffee or just a specific location, but this example is all coffees in your organization. So at the beginning of the time period, here's how much coffee you had, and here was its total value, and here was its weighted average price per pound. Once again, that is rolling in everything that you've added when you move coffee from warehouse to roastery and attach all those costs. This is a term that I'm starting to get more comfortable with, the idea of a cost of goods roasted rather than a cost of goods sold, because we acknowledge that the system is not incorporating things like the cost of packaging and the cost of labor with packaging and all those sorts of things that would really factor into cost of goods sold. So I'm thinking of it as a cost of goods roasted. Next line shows how much you added to your inventory over the time frame you selected. And the next line shows what you ended with, and then we just do the simple math for you to show you what your cost of good roasted was for that time period. Now this chart is quite similar to what you would see on the roast detail page. As I said, the roast detail page shows you the last 2 weeks of activity, and it was going to look very similar to this. This chart shows you what's happened between the dates you selected, and it shows all your coffees, not just one coffee. So it parallels this. You started out when you generated this report, the starting date, you had 7,600 pounds of coffee, which you roasted and roasted and roasted, and then you moved some more in, and then you roasted and moved some more in, and then roasted, roasted, roasted. So this should give a nice overview, organization-wide, of how coffee is moving through your company. That is everything that I wanted to go over specifically. So I'm going to stop now and turn it over to answering questions. I understand that Lindsay has already addressed a few questions.
That's right. So first off, thank you, Ryan. Really nice demo. I hope everybody got something out of that. And yes, we're going to roll into Q&A now. Let me take a minute here just to queue up a few of these questions that have come through. And also, just to let attendees know, we're going to remain on mute for now. If you have a question, you want to use the hand-raising tool within the control panel, feel free. Otherwise, just as easily, you can type me a question, and we'll queue them up. Ryan will also have visibility to them if you do that. Ryan, one of the questions that came through that I'd like you to address is, can we use the system for post-roast blends?
Not exactly. The simple answer to that is no, you can't really do it. The more complicated answer is yes. In beta testing, we discovered that there is a way of working around that partially. As a brief explanation, what I would refer to is earlier in my presentation I mentioned that we really like to look at a problem and bring it down to a size that we can manage to solve and do that really well. And that's what we've chosen to do here. And we chose to draw a line at where the coffee sort of exits the roaster. And the reason that we did that is just that post-roast blending adds in a whole layer of complexity that we didn't want to mix in at this time, opting for a better solution sooner rather than a more complicated solution that we might get wrong. Frankly, I feel like I need to understand a little bit more the big picture of post-roast blending because it's actually rather complicated. Short answer, no. Long answer, we're working on it.
Thanks, Ryan. Another question, we do have quite a few international users, and some folks want to know what currencies do we support in the software? Right,
so the way the software is set up right now, we're not really supporting any currencies. There's dollar signs appearing here, but they don't need to. Frankly, dealing with currencies is technically challenging, which doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It just means it takes a little bit of time. In the short term, I think what you can expect is that you can work in whatever numbers you want to work in. We'll take the dollar sign off if you don't want the dollar sign, and you can think about these numbers any way you'd like. They can be rand, they can be Swiss francs, whatever it is that suits you.
Right.
There's nothing about it that says it has to be dollars.
Okay. Another question, is there redundancy, or are our customers' data backed up?
Yes. So our database is backed up regularly. and we have had almost no trouble over the past year of having live customers using this system. We've never had any kind of a security breach, and with respect to data being backed up, we've had, I think, 3 very brief database outages. But every time those happened, they were first quite brief, and second, they were remedied. We figured out what went wrong, and we took steps so that that particular brand of database issue wouldn't come up again. So I think the system is very stable, and I'm very confident saying that your data is backed up and safe.
Great. Thank you. Let's see. A question about exporting reports and how to work with them. For example, can they be worked with in Excel?
Right. Before I answer that, I want to go back and just one thing I mentioned about the databases is there's redundancy also. So not only are you backed up, but it's also redundant. So we have the ability to switch immediately to a different database and keep things up and running. Right. So exporting. We will be allowing data to be exported as a CSV file. At this point, there's not going to be anything more specific than that, but we understand that people want to extract their data and do their own things with it. For me personally, I would like to solve as many problems as I can for you, but I understand that that's probably just my ridiculous personality. So yes, a CVS export of your data can be yours. You should all know that your data is yours. We don't presume that we own your data. We don't do anything with your data except keep it for you. So if you want it, absolutely, you can have it.
Great. A follow-on question on average cost determination for coffee. We do obviously take into account the green costs and shipping and special fees, but one attendee wants to know, does this also take into account shrinkage?
At this point, not exactly. This is another area where I'm waiting to hear from customers specifically how this should work. We are allowing you to input shrinkage now, and as I mentioned in the presentation, when you create a roastable, you can add a shrinkage amount in there, and then when you're looking at individual roasts, in editing that roast, you can put your actual ending mass in there, and it will calculate the actual % shrinkage. So we're collecting that data, but at this point, we're not actually doing any calculations with it. So I know that that's an interest to a lot of people. It's just one of those areas where we don't feel that we quite have a handle on what needs to be done yet. So if that matters to you, please reach out to us. Let's start a conversation. We can Skype with you, email with you, phone with you to understand what your needs are. Keep in mind, we are not coffee roasters. We're software developers and software designers and salespeople and business people. We have to hear from you what we need to build in order to do it. I try really, really hard to not make stuff up, because if I make up something for you guys, it's going to be wrong. So please tell me what you need, and we will work on building it.
Ryan, you don't need to be so hard on yourself. Your track record is actually better than you let on. So. Another question for you. Someone would like to know, is there a limit to the number of locations that can be set up in the system?
No, there isn't. Technically there is. You probably can't have 4 billion locations. But practically, no, there is no limit to the number of locations.
Great. Okay, so I think the users really want to emphasize, or at least a handful of users want to emphasize this concept or idea of post-roast blending. And the question is, do we have an ETA or some sort of time frame for a possible solution?
I wish. There's nothing concrete that I can tell you. The only time frame piece I can tell you is that the next thing we're doing is releasing our 4-input data bridge in 6 weeks, and beyond that, nothing is set. So again, this is an area where you should send me an email with capital letters and exclamation points and say, like, dude, I'm not buying inventory until you do post-roast blending. That's the kind of stuff that gets our attention. We build the stuff that is needed for coffee roasters.
Very true.
So holler.
Another blend question. Is there a way to change the percentages in the blends? that have different total weight of green for that blend? Is the question? Maybe you can.
Excuse me. If I understand the question correctly, is the question about doing that in RoastLogger? You can always change your roastable recipe on the website, wherein I can go in and look at my granny's blend and edit my blend and change the percentages here. Changing your percentage in RoastLogger is not possible. You just would change the amount.
And I think if I understand clearly, I'm wondering if the question is also if there's a disparity between the weights. Well, maybe no. I think you've got it. I think you've got it. I'll take that back. Let's see. More questions rolling in. Just give me a moment.
Yes. I assume that Lindsay and I are reading the
Same one.
same question based on the information that RoastLog provides. Yes, that's sort of the idea. Part of what I'm really focused on doing is just saving people some time. Oh, sorry. Yes, I should. Based on the information that RoastLog provides, you could just do all this manually, and a lot of people are. But it would save a step at the end of a coffee's lifespan if you could look back and determine a sales price to see what the real cost was for this product. So yeah, that would totally work. Basically, if you go into inventory and look at a historical item, something that you've used up, like let's pretend for a second that I don't have any more of this Cafe Vita, but I go in and take a look at this coffee, I'm going to have a number here which has been calculated for the entire lifespan of that coffee. Now, that could easily be expanded if it was required by customers into a reporting capability where you could say, hey, given this coffee, given this time frame, what was my real cost over that time frame, and then use that information to decide how you're going to price it this year. So yeah, we're totally on top of that one.
Great. All right. Things seem to be slowing down just a bit, and we do have a little bit more time. So we're still 10 minutes from the top of the hour. Not that we need to go that full hour, but I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity to get their questions answered. If for some reason something pops into mind and we're off the call, obviously don't hesitate to reach out to us. As I mentioned earlier, this presentation will be posted and available so that you can come back and review it as well. I want to also mention that I know earlier in the demo that Ryan was doing, there was a little bit of a snafu with the inventory amounts, and I did want to just mention that, just realize that this is our demonstration iteration, and since we've done this a couple of times, we may have mutzed with a few things that just made it difficult to get the numbers out correctly. So we apologize, but I do assure you that it will be correct when this rolls out over the weekend. Let's see. Another question. In reports, does it provide a bigger picture view of all the coffee you have to allow triggering an order with a trader, for example?
Not yet. That is, I mean, it's funny when we work on a system like this, the number of things that we can do seems to never end, and they all sound really, really cool. What you're describing is certainly something that we've thought of, something that people have spoken to us about, and something that we're interested in. The short answer is no. The information that you're looking for is right here on the main inventory page. So this is telling you right now, hey, I've got all this coffee in my roasting facility and all this coffee in my non-roasting facility. Oh, that number's looking pretty low. I guess I better do something. I'm still working on a visual representation of this that works, so you don't have to sort of parse through this table. But that's where things stand right now. This page is intended to be your sort of overview dashboard of everything that you've got and how much of it.
Okay. There seem to be some questions still rolling in. Let me just make sure that they're not relevant to the entire group, because I'm sure some people are going to start logging off soon. let's see. I have a roaster that is 66 pounds going into a roaster and another that is 72. Will the percentages reflect correctly for the two? Does that make sense to you, Ryan?
I'm sorry, which question is that?
It's the last one that came in.
Okay. I have a roast 66 pounds going into a roaster, another 72.
Clyde, if you wanna expound on that, feel free to send another question over. I see Paul. We know each other very well. Hang out. Actually, I'll give you a call after this call to answer your question. Okay, Paul, we'll take that one offline because it's very specific to your situation. Okay, and I think it's pretty much tapered off. And Clyde, do you want to expound on your question, or?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't exactly understand what you're asking. Are those roasts blends?
Yes.
Ah, I see. Yes. Yeah. I can just do that real quick. Let's add Granny's blend to the queue.
And for the benefit
66.
of the audience, I'm just going to reread what Clyde's kind of sent in. It says, I have a roaster that is 66 pounds, or a roast that is 66 pounds going into the roaster and another that is 72 pounds. Will the percentages reflect correctly for the two?
So based on the recipe that you define on the website, there's your breakdown calculation for how much of each different coffee would go in order to do that 66-pound roast. Is that right? Does that answer your question?
Great. Glad we could get that.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, it looks like that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks again to everyone for taking time out of your busy days to join us. We hope it was helpful. On that note, if you don't mind, on the way out of the session, if you can let us know how we did, that'd be great. We put together just a really brief survey. We remember this was our first round at doing these webinars. We just want to know how we did, if we met your expectations. And then in the end, we just want to know that we're supporting you guys well in general. So once you log off from the webinar, you'll see a couple short survey questions pop up. They may pop up in a new browser tab or window, so just be aware of them. And we appreciate your candid responses. All right? Everybody, thank you again for your time. Have a nice day if it's early enough for you, and have a nice evening if you're winding down your day. Cheers.
Thank you very much.